Hello guys, what's up? How's your Sunday going on? So, how's everything? Is it too early for a Sunday to um, read out news articles? I don't think so. I'll just give a very brief outline of some news that have come in the last couple of days, maybe, even if it's not today, even if it's not in the last 1.5 hours. Let's start with the news. Just hold on. Just hold on. Okay, let's start with the articles. UK government accuses Russia of cyber campaign to interfere with political processes. The UK's National Cyber Security Centre has said that Russian intelligence services had held a campaign of malicious cyber activity attempting to interfere in UK politics and democratic processes. In a statement released on their website, the NSCS said the attempts of interference were sustained but unsuccessful. It linked a group called Star Blizzard to the activity, which the NSCS said is almost certainly subordinate to Center 18 of Russia's Federal Security Services. Russian nationalists who wanted to run against Putin to stay in detention. Russian nationalist Igor Girkin, who had said he wanted to challenge Vladimir Putin in a presidential election in March, had his detention extended for 6 months on Thursday as he awaits trial on charges of inciting extremism. The ruling, announced by a Moscow court, extinguishes the already faint prospect that Gherkin might be allowed to run. The 52-year-old is known in the West for his role in the shooting down of Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 over Ukraine in 2014, with the loss of 298 passengers and crew. A Dutch court later last year convicted him in absentia of murder. Gherkin has denied any kind of involvement in this. Putin claims Russia is becoming growth center of the new global economy. Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed Thursday that Russia's economic isolation as a result of international sanctions is actually helping the country to become a growth center in a new global economy. Addressing the Russia Calling Business Forum in Moscow on Thursday, Putin said sovereignty was a requisite for economic success, repeating claims made previously that sanctions had made Russia economically self sufficient. Putin's spy chief tells US Ukraine will become your Vietnam. Russian President Vladimir Putin's foreign intelligence chief told the United States on Thursday that Western support for Ukraine would turn the conflict into a second Vietnam, haunting Washington for years to come. Putin sent troops into Ukraine early last year, triggering a war that has killed or wounded hundreds of thousands and led to the biggest confrontation between Russia and the West in 6 decades. Russians want to ask Putin when the war will end. Russian citizens appear increasingly keen to question Russia's leadership on the expected time frame and outcome of the war in Ukraine, despite attempts by the Kremlin to avoid a focus on what it calls a special military operation before the 2024 election. A survey by independent Russia polling organization Levada Center published Tuesday looked at the questions that Russian citizens want to ask Russian President Vladimir Putin during the upcoming Direct Line, an annual phone-in that allows the Russian police to ask Putin a variety of questions. It will take place on December 14, 2023. The Levada Center found that 21% of all questions in the open-ended poll relate to the end of the war in Ukraine and what the outcome of the so-called special military operation would be. Levada Center reported that questions in this category included questions about the time frame for an end to the war, the end of mobilization, and the possibility of peace or victory. The poll indicates that Russian public continues to have questions about the end and outcome of the war, despite the Russian government's attempt to silence anti-war rhetoric and protests to mobilization. The Institute for the Study of War has noted the poll is consistent with recent independent Russian polling indicating that Russians increasingly support a withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukraine, and showing that over half of Russian respondents believe that Russia should begin peace negotiations with Ukraine, the Institute of War said. Another piece of important news: Russia's presidential elections to be held on March 17, 2024. Russia's Federation Council, the upper house of Russia's Federal Assembly, voted anonymously Thursday to hold Russia's next presidential election on March 17, 2024. In essence, this decision marks the start of the election campaign. Valentina Matviyenko, Speaker of the Upper House Parliament, said on Thursday. Russian President Vladimir Putin has not yet announced whether he will stand for re-election, although he is widely expected to do so. He is expected to announce his intention to run again in his annual press conference and public phone-in on December 14. The Kremlin insists that political plurality is alive and well in Russia, but in reality there is a systematic opposition of several long-standing political parties that largely took the government line. Many of Putin's critics and political opponents have been silenced through imprisonment or sustained campaigns of harassment and intimidation that have prompted them to flee the country. A number of them have died in suspicious circumstances. In the more than 2 decades Putin has been in power, the Kremlin has invariably denied any involvement in attacks on the political opposition. Russia rebukes the US after Biden comments on potential NATO Russia war, a top Russian official said. US President Joe Biden's warning about a potential direct clash between the US and Russia is unacceptable for a responsible nuclear power. Anatoly Antonov, Russia's ambassador to the US, commented on Telegram on Thursday, saying that the US was trying to add fuel to the fire of the Ukrainian war by proxy. Russia has repeatedly claimed that the war in Ukraine is a proxy war and the country is being used by its Western allies such as NATO to try to defeat Russia. NATO, which has supplied large amounts of military aid to Ukraine, says it is helping Kyiv to defend its territorial sovereignty after Russia's unprovoked invasion in early 2022. They have completely lost touch with reality, easily talking about the likelihood of a direct clash between the armed forces of our countries, Antonov wrote. Do not let Putin win. Biden pleads with Republicans on Ukraine. President Joe Biden pleaded with Republicans on Wednesday for a fresh infusion of military aid for Ukraine, warning that a victory for Russia over Ukraine would leave Moscow in position to attack NATO alliances and could draw US troops into war. Biden spoke as the United States planned to announce $175 million in additional Ukraine aid from its dwindling supply of money for Kyiv. He signaled a willingness to make significant changes to US migration policy along the border with Mexico to try to draw Republican support. If Putin takes Ukraine, he won't stop there. Biden said Putin will attack a NATO ally, he predicted, and then we'll have something that we don't seek and then we don't have today. American troops fighting Russian troops. True, Biden said. We can't let Putin win. Russia's RIA news agency quoted that Russian ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov, as saying that Biden's comments on a potential US-Russia conflict were provocative rhetoric unacceptable for a responsible nuclear power. However, Senate Republicans later said blocked Democratic-backed legislation that would have provided billions of dollars in new security assistance for Ukraine and Israel, among other international concerns, saying they wanted to press their point about the importance of tighter border policy. So, this is what has been happening, and if Putin will go ahead for the election, if he gets nominated for the election and if he wins, we can very well imagine what is going to happen, right? So President Biden has said that we cannot let Ukraine or we cannot let Putin win, and if he wins, something more dangerous will happen. They will have to fight with NATO, and things will be taken at a different level altogether. US says Russia rejected proposal for release of Paul Whelan, Ivan Gershkovich. Russia in recent weeks rejected a substantial new proposal for the release of Paul Whelan and Ivan Gershkovich, two Americans considered by the US to be wrongfully detained in Russia. So, as for today, this is the news I have. I'm in a hurry, in a bit of a hurry today. Is Sunday, so tomorrow again we'll come back with some more news articles. Stay safe and enjoy your Sunday. Bye.